Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Good morning, and how are you? Yeah. So as we have dealt with the files in C++ yesterday, and today we are going to deal with the same topic in Python. So we'll learn, inshallah, about files, and if time permits, I'll go with exceptions and handling exceptions in Python. Or else I'll go with only files topic today, inshallah. Okay. So let us begin. As we have seen so many benefits and we have understood what it means by creating a file when we are programming. So of course, this files helps us to organize and store our data. And one point that I missed in our last class is that usually the files would be of only two types. What are those two types? A text file and a binary file. So by the name convention, you can understand that what I mean by a binary file. The binary file will have only the values which are of binary. I mean to say zeros and ones. Whereas in a text file, the values will be in the form of strings. Okay, in terms of coding, the values will be in the form of string. So we always use text files on a regular basis, but when it comes to the binary files, we use it whenever we have some kind of images or video data, because these data would be converted into the binary format to do some processing or to access those files. Okay, and as I have told you again that the data when we are running a program stores in volatile memory, but if you want to store it permanently, then we'll go with the files, inshallah. And what are the operations that we can perform on files? We have seen two major operations on file yesterday. It was read and write. Of course, you can also amend the files, even if it is in C++. The same way, we can perform three of the operations on files in Python. What's those? Reading a file, writing a file, and also amending a file. Amend or append. So what's the difference between a file amend or file creation? When we amend a file, the already created file will be added some content. Whereas if you create a file with the same name, then a new file will be created, right? Okay. So where will the amend operation perform its task? Whenever you are trying to amend a file, it will always start from the end of the file. The first file will have some end character, right? At the end. After that, the new operations will be taking place. I hope you got this point, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So how you are going to access a file in these three different modes: read, write, and append mode. So we can access the file with just by giving the file name and the mode that we want to access it. The mode, it means read mode or write mode or append mode. Every mode has a symbol. We'll just give the symbol when we are programming. So let us see a very quick example of how we can create a new file. Yeah. What we have told, we need to write the variable name. I can say the variable like, okay, file variable. Okay, this is our variable. After that, we'll give the variable name. Okay, and what name we can give? Anything. Okay, before that we have to open that. We have seen it yesterday also, but we had 2 to 3 lines of code to do this operation, but here you can do it only with in a line. How? The open operation will be there, and the file name will be there, and even the object will be there itself. Whereas yesterday we had the creation of the object using if or OF stream, then opening the file and then doing something on that, right? Now we have just this thing. Okay, first dot, I can give txt or text, and I want to open that file in the write mode because I don't have this file, and because I am creating it for the first time. So after that, I want to write something in this file. If you remember how we wrote something in a file using that file object, right? What is our file object here? File variable dot. We have the function or method called write, which will help us to write to a file. We don't have to use the print here. We have to use explicitly the write function to write something in a file. Okay, so this is the file object dot write, and whatever you want to write, you need to write it as it is in a print statement. Okay, I write hello world. Okay, then when I execute this, I am expecting that a new file is created. Okay, what happened here? We have created this file object and then written to a file, and this we got the hello world. Another way to write it is write everything in a main function. I haven't explained you what I mean by a main function because it was not required in the previous things, but now I'll tell you what is a main function and how we can use the main function in Python. Okay, so even we did this line of code, we got our output. Okay, fine. Now, how we define any function? Here we don't have the main function as the complete predefined function, but only the keyword of the main is predefined. The rest we have to define it ourselves, right? In C++, main is a predefined function, isn't it? Right? It follows some syntax. Okay. Here the keyword main is also predefined, but it will not follow any syntax. Only there is a name that we have to use, like we use other functions in Python. For example, length. Length is also a predefined function, right? But what we do, we use the length function and do whatever we want. The same way we'll use the main function and do whatever we want. Okay, but of course this has some different different use than the other functions. Okay, so how we can do? We can define the main function. We define any function in this way, right? Definition and then function name and then a colon, and then we follow the indentation rules. Okay, by this we have defined the main function, and now let me just delete this thing, delete the file. After defining the main function, like the other programming languages, the main will not get executed on its own. We have to call the main explicitly as we used to call it, call any other function in Python. Okay. So what we did, we have defined a main function, and inside the main function, we are saying that please create a file and write something to this file. After that, we are calling to this main, right? Main function also need a call like the other functions in Python. Okay, and now I run this code. Okay, this time also I got it. So what's the reason? Why do I need a main function, or why do I have to write this content in the main function? this is always a good programming practice? The first answer is it's a good programming practice. You don't have to mandate yourself to write it in a function or main function. But
So why did we call this main function
yeah,
again?
that's I'm going to that point. Yeah. For example, if we have so many lines of codes and we have so many files, for example, file 1, I have created a file 1 object and I am writing, opened it in the write mode, and using that file 1 object, what I want to do is I do some operations, and in this file I use some variables like I can say number 1 and I keep the variable 10, okay, and I create another file 2 and I do some other operations on this file. Then on, what I do, I want to perform some calculation on number 1 of file 1 and number 2 of file 2, okay. So when I am performing the operations, sometimes I may need to store the values of these operations and also store the values of this operation. Sometimes I can take the same variable or different variable. So what happens is, when we are doing so many kinds of operations, then and we have so many lines of codes, our program gets much complicated and we need to remember every variable, okay, where this variable is coming from, whose variable, and we have to name every variable in a different way. Every variable has to have a unique name, okay. Then when we are defining the main function, what happens is the variables which we create here and whatever the value that we store, for example, we are getting some value, I can say value from file 1, okay, and we can get some another value 1 from file 2, okay. So these values remains local to this main function. Then what I can do is I can reuse the value name, the name of the value here, and give some other thing, XYZ. So the value here is different from the value here. Are you getting my point? So when we keep it in a block, when we keep it inside a block, what does this mean? This retains in only that local block, and this is a local value. It cannot be accessed globally all over the program. For example, I have calculated the value here XYZ, okay. So this value XYZ can be accessed with every file. Every file can access this value. Every other module, every other function that's there in this program can access this. But I don't want this value to be accessed everywhere. But I want it to be accessed by only some part of the function. Or I can also say this. I can also say that this value, every file will have some kind of value. For example, if we are calculating something from a file, then we are getting value from every file. Then I want to have those all values at one place and using the same variable, okay. Are you getting my point? Or in just simple words, to keep our files and to keep our values local and not accessible globally, we use it in a function, okay. Okay, this point should be enough for you to understand, and this is the main motivation of every programmer to write any of the file in a function, okay. Not only the main function, but of course you can write it in any other function. Like for example, I have changed the name, and it's not a main function now, it has this thing, okay. And it also creates it, it also does your task, okay. This will also do your task, but it's a good way to program things in a function so that you can keep the values that you are getting local to that main function, okay. you can understand this in a very good way when you have so many lines of code. Your program is very big, then it would be easier for you to understand. Inshallah, you will understand it in future. Okay, so then one thing you have to write every time is the file object dot close. Yesterday we have seen, I have told you that why we need to close the file always. We have to close the file always. Okay, and this thing we have written it. This was our first file. Now let us see how we can read something from a file. Okay, when we are reading something from a file, we have to give the name of the file and then the mode should be R. The same file, what I'll do, I'll not change the variable name. Every time we have to write the variable name and then we have to write the keyword open. Then we have to write the file name and then the mode. Now I change the file mode as read. So what I am doing here, read. Even if you are opening a file for read or opening a file for write or append, you have to close the file using that object. Okay. When I am saying variable and whenever I am saying the object, please understand every time as the object, because object would be the right terminology and it's the correct way of mentioning the variable of an object. Okay, the variable of a file. It means it's an object. Okay. Yeah. So for reading, what I have to do is, yesterday we have seen that how we can read our data from a file. We have to store whatever the data that's coming. Okay. I can store the data in a variable called data. And then how can I access the data from the file? Using the file object dot, there is another function called read. What we have learned here, open, and another function called write. When we are writing something, we used to the file object dot write, and whatever we want to write, we will write inside this like a print statement. But when we are reading, how do we read? Whatever we are reading, we'll store it in a variable using the file object dot read. Now read does not take any arguments because we are taking it, right? So it will not have any arguments inside it. After that, okay, we have read this thing, fine, and I run this. Okay, did I get anything? Why I didn't get anything here on my console? I am reading this file. Doesn't it has to give me some output? Whatever it's there in the file, doesn't it has to give me, right, on the console? Why it's not giving me?
I didn't understand the question.
So I have read the file using the file object and I have stored it in the variable data. Okay, but I am saying that why I'm not seeing the output? Whatever the file has here, it has to be displayed on my console. Why I'm not getting it? What's the reason? We got all the values into data from this file using the read function. Whenever we said the read using and dot of this file object, this read will access the original file using the file variable object, then stores it in the data. I want to have whatever the data that's there here to be printed on the console. I want to see it on the console.
File variable dot data.
Okay. If you remember last time what we did, when we are accessing a file and reading a file, all the content is stored here in the data, but we haven't print, right? If we want to print it on the console, what does this mean? How we can print it on the console? Right? We forgot of how we can operate the console. It's the custom way of programming that we always do, right? Print the data. Whatever it's there in the file, we can print it. See, we got it. Because I want the content that's stored in this data to be printed here. Okay, good.
Yeah, one thing, yeah, how this hello world we got output, right?
Yes,
So where is it stored?
it's here from the file. From the file, we got the hello world output to here because we are calling this file in a read mode, and then we are reading the content of the file and then printing the content. The content is there in the data. Okay.
Okay, can you show how do you save that one?
Which
The
one?
the first .txt file. What did you?
In the last program that we did, just if I write W, right, in the write mode, and then I have written the data using file variable dot write, and I have written hello world here, and so I got it there. Okay, in the last program that we did, we wrote it to that file. In this program, after creation of the file, the creation, it means it was written. After writing, we are reading it now. See, if I can show it here, I have this. See, we have written it in this way. Of course, it's in different lines here, but in the program, I have written it in one line. Okay, hello world.
Just I'm asking the saving part. How did it got saved?
How did it got saved means this is the way of programming in Python. When we use these lines of code like open and write and these things, it means that these are files. We are operating with files. This is the way of programming. Okay, this is already predefined. So just we have to make sure to use those instructions and do the coding. Okay. Yeah. And then we have how we can use anything line by line, because when we did it, I'll just try to modify this text file into write mode again to write something else to this file. Okay, and this is our file variable dot, okay, file variable dot write. Now I want to write something like this, hello. Okay, and then I say here plus /n. Okay, it means that in the next line then I write world. Okay, world. So what happens is we'll get 2 lines of code, right? What's happening? Okay, there has to be only one. Yeah, then let me write something else again, and I write Python here. Okay, and I write this same thing here. Yeah, so what we'll have in our text file is the 3 lines of code, hello world Python. Okay, once I have written this, now I want to read this file. Okay, the file is created. Now I am going to the read mode, and I am trying to read the value, read, and then what I want to do is store it in the data. Okay, file variable dot read, and then I will print the data. Print, what's there? It's the data. Okay, so when we see this, we got all the data, right? We got everything that we want. But if I want to read only one line, I can say data 1. So I can say read line. Okay. Yeah, here I have to print the data 1. Okay. Because I have written the data 1 variable, and data 1, what it printed me? Only the first line. If I want to access the next line, only the next line of this code, then I say read line again. So when I have written read line for the first time, it will read the first line. When I write the read line for the next time, it will read the second line. So it will go to the next thing. I have printed only data 1, and so it gives me only one line. Now let me print the data 2 and see what it will print for me. Okay. See, I got the hello and the second line called world. Okay, the same way you can read the third line by using a read line and storing it in some variable. So I'll show you something else. Okay, read lines, and let me comment this. Yeah. Okay, so when I use the read lines, the using of read and read lines is a bit different. Okay, when I use this read lines, then how it will give me is in the form of a tuple. Sorry, in the form of a list, right? It will give me in the form of a list. But why it's giving me the slash n? Because however it was written in the print statement, that will be given. How we wrote it when creating the first.txt? Hello plus slash n, right? Whatever it was there in the print will be given as it is when we use the read lines. Okay, got my point?
Yes.
Okay, so we have seen this, how we can read the different lines using read line, and let me show you how we can write a numeric data to a file. Because our file is txt, I was only giving you the strings, right? Until now we have written only the strings. Let us see how we can write a number to a file. Okay, we need to write a number to a file. So I want to use the same file again, and I want to open this time in the read mode, write mode. And then what I want to do is I want to write some number. Let me say, okay, yeah. Let me write number equals to some 10. Okay, and this number I want to write it in the file. When I have given number 10 here, it means that it's written in the program and not in the file. It's there here in the program but not in the file. To write this thing in the file, what I need to do? Use the file object dot write, and I have to pass that number to the write method. Okay. Yes, and then I have closed it.
It's value, we don't give the value here.
Which value? This one?
Yeah.
No, we'll only access by using the name of the value that we are giving. This is the value, this is the name. We'll only give access all the variables with their names and not by the values. So now I want anyone to answer this, that why we get this error here. What is the error that we are getting? It says that at the line 4, yeah, at the line 4 that we have here, this thing, it says that this is an error. And what is the error? It says the type error. Type means the data type. This is called error handling in Python. Whenever there is some error, you have to be capable to handle that error by understanding it, by reading it and then understanding, oh, what's happening here. It says the type error. Type means the data type error. It says that must be string, not an int. What we have sent in the line 4?
String.
It's not a string, it's a number. What it's storing? The number is being stored. What is the number? It's an integer. So it says that you cannot send an integer. It must be a string. The reason it's saying that, because our file is a text file. So it will take all the text. If you remember, we have seen the concept of conversion of numbers to a string and strings to a number. How we used to do? For example, if I want to convert an integer to a string, how I did? str of that particular integer. Whatever the integer variable that we have, I can say integer variable, that we can do it like this. For example, if we want to convert a string to an integer, how we used to do? That type conversion, this string. Okay, do you remember how we took the input from the user? N equals to input. Okay, input, enter something, but it don't accept any of the integer from you. For accepting the integers, we used to typecast everything using the typecasting operators. Here we are converting string to an integer. Now we have to convert an integer to a string. Okay, what I have to do? Convert that integer into string and I write str. And I see if it stores now. Yes, I got it. Now just tell me something. I want to store another number 2. I'll write this number 1. Okay, number 1. Okay. Now I want to take the number from the user. How I have to do? Int input and I write, please enter the number 2, right? Okay, so whatever I'll enter, that will be there in the number 2. What I'll do is copy it again, and this time I will write the number 2 in the file. What's happening? The execution has started from the main, and then it came here, it created the file in the write mode, and it's still in the writing mode until and unless we close it. Number 1 has been written, right? And then it's asking me to please enter the number 2. Okay, this time I give 20. Okay, it was 220. Okay, I give 20, and this time, what, it's 100. Yeah, okay. So how I'll write it here is plus /n. Okay. Okay, this was number 2, right? So it was not 220. When I entered it last time, I entered 20 and I deleted one thing, right?
Yes.
I deleted 2 2s. So there was only 0 that was stored. So this time I'll carefully give 20 and this is 20. Okay. Yeah. This time we got it the correct way. So here let me keep a /n to not confuse me much. Yeah. So this time the cursor will be down and then I can easily enter the 20. Yeah. So we have known that how we can keep the numbers in a file. When you want to store the numbers or write the numbers to a file, you have to use the string conversion. Now my question is, how can I access this? When I am reading the file, of course, all these things are written as strings, isn't it? These are strings. As per the program, these are strings because it's a text file. I want to read this file and I want to read all the numbers that are there in the file. I can say the data 1 and read line. I will write the read line, okay? And this time I say data 2 and I read line again, okay? So what's there in data 1 and data 2? You know it, right? What's there in data 1 and data 2? Tell me, please.
10, 20.
Okay, 10 and 20. So in the printing, I'll just give the slash n again. No. Okay. Instead of giving the slash n, what I want to give is data 1 plus data 2. What it has to give us? I am expecting it to give me the addition of this number 1 and number 2. Okay. Sorry. I have to access the read line using the file variable, right? I have missed the file object. File object dot read line. Okay. This time I am reading the data. And then, so what it gave me, it doesn't give me the data 1 plus data 2, but instead it giving me just 10 and 20 as it is. As it is. I want the summation of these two. I want the program to consider it as a integer and not as a string. Are you getting my point?
Yes.
So what can we do it? What can we do? I have told you that we can specify the int conversion. Okay, I write the int here. Sorry, int here. And what's happening? The data that we are getting from the file, that would be converted into integer and stored here. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So this time we got the summation of the two integers that we want from this file. Yes, you got it, right? So whenever you are dealing with some numbers in a text file, you have to explicitly go with the type conversions. Okay, you have to explicitly convert the type. When we are writing to the file, you have to convert it as a string. And when you are reading from the file, you have to explicitly read it as an integer. Okay.
If you want to perform any operation.
Yes. Just give me a second. Yeah. So we have known that we have to use the type conversion explicitly to read or write our numerical data into a file or from a file. So my quick question is, I don't want to use the type conversion here. I have removed from it. And I want you to answer my question that if I don't want to use the type conversion when I am reading the data from the file, but I want it to print the summation. I don't want to use the type conversion here, but anywhere else. How can I do? Okay, except this 2 lines of code, you can use it anywhere. Where can I use to convert the strings into an integer?
In the print line?
Yes, in the print we can use it here, like int data 1 and int data 2. Okay, and this will also give us the same results that we are expecting. Okay, this will give us the summation. Now we'll move a little forward here. If we want to access the files using lists, we have a list. For example, let me just define a list. Okay. Yeah. I'll define a list called names, and this time I give the names, for example, like this, and we have my name, and then we have the name Mehraj. This is our list, and in this list, now I want to store all this list in our file. I'll now change the mode of my file in this way, and now I access the file object again, and I try to write all the things in that list. Okay, but I cannot directly write it. We know that whenever we are accessing anything in a list, we have to always go with a loop, because the list will have the indexes. So using indexes only we can access all the elements of the list. So I have to go with the for loop or any loop, especially for accessing the a list. We always go with the for loop, and I say index as the variable for index of the variable in what is the list name? It's names. After that I put a colon, and then I say now write. What do we need to write here? Do I have to go with names or do I have to go with the index? Because I'm taking the index as each element from the list names, so I'll go with the index. And each time I say please also keep a slash n. I mean to say please write it in the next lines. Write all the things in the next line each time. Okay, because we are not storing it in the form of a list in the file now, but we are storing all of the things in the form of text. So we got it. How we did? We used a for loop, and then we have run the for loop throughout the list and written using the indexes. Okay, and then every time that we are writing each element, we are saying that please write the other element in the next line. So you can do the same thing with the strings, with the tuples. You can do this with the tuples, and even you can do this with the other ways of like dictionaries or records or even arrays. Of course, I have not covered you dictionaries and arrays. I'll try to cover it in the upcoming classes, inshallah. So it's not very different from the list and tuples, but it has some more functionalities and more use in programming. Inshallah, we'll cover that too. A quick question, that how we can access the files, access the list that is written here. Okay, now I want to read our file that is written. We have written everything. This is already written there in the file, so I'll remove this. Now I want to open the same file in the read mode, and I want to read everything that's there in the file. Okay, so I have to remove this all, and I write names to store the content that is coming from the file. Okay, I want to store it in the names, and what I say is file variable dot what I can say, I can write read lines. Okay, read lines. What does this read lines do? Read everything, right?
Yes.
Okay, first let me print this, and then I'll go a little forward and explain you more, because to understand each and every line of code, we have to know what it's printing. For analyzing any of the thing, we have to use this. So we have seen that whenever we are reading line, that will give us in the form of a list. We have seen it in the last example, right? We have seen it, and with a slash n every time. Okay, but now I say that I don't want the slash n. This is in the form of a list. I want to access each of the name and print it in the next line as it is that's there in the file. It has to come like this. I don't want it to come in the form of a list and with yani it's as it is given from the writing method. If you remember the writing thing that we have done while creating the file, how we did a list with all these things, right? Exactly the replica of that thing we got it. But I don't want this to be printed like this, but I want to print it in the form of a file. Whatever it's there here like this, it has to come Shahana, Alia and Mehraj. Okay, so what I do here is how can, just now I have told you, how can we access a list from here to here? How can we run through the list?
Indexing, using indexing.
Yes, using indexing. Fine. So now I want to use the indexing to print it in the form. Okay, how can I run from here to here? Because we don't know how many elements are there in the list. Now we know, of course, it's from 0 to 3. I can write like this for, let me comment this print, and I can write like this for I in range of 3 or 4. Okay, so it means that the I will run until 3 here, but because I know the element number here, these are 3 elements, so I'm using this. But when we don't know the element, the number of elements, how we can do? We have to calculate the number of elements in the list, or I can say the number of elements in an array or number of elements in a tuple using the length function, right? Wasn't our custom to use a length function to find out the length of a list or tuple, right? We did it already. So for using this function, what I have to do is, okay, tell me if I want to use less than or greater than in my codes, we follow the for loop or the while loop in Python. In C++, we can use any. But in Python, whenever we are using the less than or greater than or any some comparison operators, what we were using, while loop or the for loop?
While loop.
While loop. Okay, we'll use while loop for now. Okay, so then we'll go by initializing some index. Of course, our index will start from 0 always. Then we'll say, okay, our index has to run from where to where? Index has to run from 0 until the length, right? Length of what? Length of this one, right? We are storing all the tuple in the names from the file. So I have to pass these names. So what happens? The while loop is running from the 0 until the end, the length of the tuple. Then what I say is every time I have to store each index, I can say the names of index. So what is this? Okay, this list of 0 should store what it has to store. It has to actually store the list of 0. It's not making any different. Okay, this is same. What I'm doing is just catching up each element and storing it as each element to print here, to print down. Okay, I am segregating it in terms of index 0, index 1, and just I am trying to separate it. Then I print the names. Okay, before that I have to also do index plus equals 1, right? Each time I have to increase the index to run this loop. Okay, I'll show you something here. I'll show you something here because I have, okay, there is the error here. Just wait. Mehraj, tell me the error that I am doing here. I want to store names of 0 and also names of index, right? So I'll just explain you here what I am doing. Our names is being stored as like this. I want this names to be written as like this. Name of 0 should be the first element that is being taken from this names of 0. I am trying to just change the orientations. Names of 1 and take something, and then names of 2 and then take something. So when I am changing the orientation 0, 1, 2, what values that I have to place in this names of 0, names of 1 and names of 2? What values do I have to save? Of course, which is coming from this. Of course, which are coming from the names that are stored from the file. Are you getting my point?
Yes, this length is in string.
Yes, length will be in the strings, but this is not a, sorry, length is not a string, length is an integer. Length will give us an integer because we are running from 0 to the length. So this is an integer, but these are the strings. Okay. If I run this time, the last time I have written it, this thing. Okay. Now, what I got is I have got this in index of 0, index of 1 and index of 2. If you remember the one function that we used, strip. What strip used to do? Do you remember the strip? We had right strip and the left strip. How it was? R strip. If I want to go with the R strip, it's right strip and slash n. So what this R strip function does? Strip means cut it out. Cut it out the right part of it. If you remember the last print names, we didn't get this one, right? We didn't get this one, but this time we got this slash n. Why we got this slash n? Because we oriented this tuple in the form of this thing. Index 0, we just change the orientation. Index of 1, each in the next line. Okay, if you see this output, I hope you will understand it. Okay, just wait a minute. Yeah, so what I was saying, where we were here, right? So how we converted this tuple in the form of indexes? We have converted this in the form of indexes. Okay, to understand this thing, let me just comment here and show you something above. Okay, when I write names, when I try to print here, print names. Okay, there is the indentation error where it is at the index 0. Okay, let me just remove this. Okay, yeah, and then I try to print. So what we got, we are printing it in the form of this thing. Now I say names of 0. Oh, it directly giving me the names of 0 here. I think I don't have to convert it in the form of this all indexes. Okay, if it's giving me names of 0 without converting it in the form of indexes, then I can directly go with this and I don't have to bother much. Okay, this thing I wanted. Okay, I was trying to solve this problem in the form of this thing. Okay, it gave me Shahana and then Alia, and this is the outcome that I wanted. Okay.
Strip function which you used for slash n, the strip function, it stripped the slash n in each case.
Yes.
So can we strip any one of the names here by using this strip function?
Yes, whatever the name that you want to strip here, you have to write here, but it has to be in the same line. It has to be in the same line. Yeah, what difference that I am getting here is, see, you can understand here what difference that we are getting here is, we are not getting the slashins. We are not getting the slashins in this case when we are trying to strip that slashin. Okay, so this is only one of the way of how, see here, you got the difference. The whole line of code, previously when I was directly trying to print names of 0 and names of 1, it was not giving me, and that's the reason I wanted to convert this names list in the form of a indexed one. Okay, that's the reason I have written all of these codes, and every time what I was doing is stripping this slash n. Okay, so if you got this, we'll move a little forward and look into the next topics that we need to cover today. Okay, and then yes, we have, what we have is reading a list of numbers or creating a list of numbers. First we have to write a list of numbers into a file and then we'll read it. Okay, as we have seen it as the numeric data that is being written to a file, now we'll try to write a numeric data in a file using a list. Okay, let me open this our file with in the write mode, and let me create a list called numbers, and I write 1, 2, 3 as the list. And how we can write, I have shown you about the strings, right? How we can write the strings? It's the same for the numbers too. For I say item I in numbers, each time I can write that using the file variable dot write. And now I write what I need to write, the I, right? The I have to write because every time the element is being stored in I. Then if I want to store it in the next line, I'll write slash n. Okay, fine. Can I store the I directly? Can I store the I directly? Please answer my question. Can I store the I directly? I is a number which is running from here to here.
Storing, I did not get store or remember storing.
Storing it in the file. We are writing it in the file. We have to convert it in the string and then we can store it or write it in the file. Because this is a text file, for writing any numeric data, we have to convert it in the string and then only we can write it to the file. If we write directly numerical data, it gives us an error, which is the type error that we have seen in the last problem. So let me remove this list now and let me try to read whatever it's there in the file. Okay, now what I do is I just try to read all the numbers. Okay,
this is a file which stores only text, right?
Yes.
So do we have any numeric file like that?
Binary one.
Store.
You can store the binary one. So the text file will store the numbers also, but in the form of a string. It will consider the number as the strings. Okay. Yeah, this time what I am doing is taking all the numbers from the file using the read lines. Okay, and if I print the numbers, okay, what happens if I print the numbers? How we got? We got 1 slash and 2 slash and 3. If we don't want the slashes every time, we have to go with the lines of code that we have done. So how we can create remove the slashes every time? Using the indexing, index of 0, and then we'll go with the same lines of codes again. Index less than length of that numbers, and each time we need to remove the slash n by stripping out. Numbers of index should be then, sorry, it should be equal to numbers of index. Okay, okay, is it good? Index plus equals to 1. Then we print the numbers. Let me remove the print here and keep the print here. Okay, now we'll get a little complication here, and I want you to think about it and answer me what we'll get and what we need to do to resolve this.
Add R strip.
Okay, let me go with the R strip. Okay, and I have to remove the slash n. Okay, okay, but do you think is it a number?
No, it's in semicolon.
It's in this is not a number, of course, but these are not numbers, right? So I have to convert. For example, if I am removing this thing,
what I'm saying, the output
yes,
part is in
I
semicolon.
have to convert it in the form of an integer. First, I have to convert all these things in the form of integers. So do I need the slash and strip here? No, I don't need the slash and strip here, because that's not a string, but that's an integer. That's the reason if I use a type conversion here, it will directly strip off the slash n's and understand that, oh, this is not a string and this is an integer, and so I don't have to keep the slash n's. It will remove it by itself. Okay, so if we keep the r strip explicitly, of course that will remove the slash n's, but that will not consider this as the numbers but as the integers. As I have told you a long ago, and I am repeating the same statement again, Python has so many ways of doing the problem. The same problem, the same program, you can solve it in n number of ways. It does not follow anything. It does not follow any syntax. In the other programming languages, you have at least some lines of syntax. The way that I have written the same program, you can write it in any other way. You will find so many ways. So we don't have to stick with one way of programming and, oh, she has written like this, so I have to do like this. No, you can just Google it by yourself and see the other way. I do the same thing. I just try to solve some problem and I think on my mind, okay, this is a problem. So how do I have to solve? Okay, I can do this way or this way. I experiment and come to you and show it, whatever I have. You can do the same way. You can Google it and build up your programming skills. So if you want to read so many lines of code or so many lines of data from a file, or write so many lines of data to a file, how we are going to do? We always used loops, right? Even last time, what we did when we were trying to write numerous data to a file, we used loops. Loops is the very easiest way to access a file from top to bottom, and also to write to a file from top to bottom. Okay, let us take one simple example. If we want to take the marks of n number of students in a class, okay? If I want to store the marks of n number of students in a file, how can I do that? Okay, this is the example, storing the marks of n number of students in a file. This time I name the file students.txt. Okay, and this is in the form of in the write mode. This time I am taking the file in the write mode because I want to create the new file called student.txt. Before creating the file, I want to take some input from the user saying that number of students, I can say student number, and I ask the user to please input the number of students that you want to have in your file. Okay, once I got the number from the user, I create a new file using the file variable, and then I run a loop from 0, or I can say from 1 until the number. Okay, I have to run from 1 until the number. I use a loop for I. Now, who's there with me? Okay, Mehraj, tell me the answer. How can I run the loop from 1 until this number of students? You know this, okay? We use a specific function to run a loop from here to here. We use the range function, right? And we keep 1 comma, yes, 1 comma number of students. Will it give me until the number of students or less than number of students?
Plus
1 less than the number of students. In this case, I can write +1. Okay, and then I write like this, or else I can keep 0 to number of students to run it from that number. Okay, you can write 0 to number of students or 1 to number of students plus 1. Then on, what we do, what I have told you, that we have to store the marks in the file. But where are the marks? Did we take the marks? No, we haven't took the marks. So what we can do is we can take the marks of each student using a for loop. Okay, let me take the marks of each student in the for loop. Marks, and every time what I say is, I can write integer. We can take the marks in integer, right? Int input, and I say please enter the marks of student. I have to number each student. Okay, I want to number the each student. How can I number the each student? The numbers are being run in I, right? I can write plus I. It gives me enter the marks of student 1. First time it will give me 1. Second time it will give me 2. Third time it will give me 4. Something like this. And then I want to give some space, like because the I will be there 1, and when I give the marks again 1 will get confused. Last time we have seen with one example, right? So let me give some space so that the number that we enter comes after some space. Okay, now, okay, this thing, I hope any one of you will able to answer that why it's giving me some error here. Okay. Oh, okay, let me take it. Fine. Okay, let me take the number of students as 6, and then it gave me the error. Number of students, the file is created. The first thing, it took the number of students, is created the file in the write mode, and then what happened? It says where at the line 6. Okay, here is the line 6 in main function. It says enter the marks of students It says can't convert int object to string implicitly. Where is the int object which can't be converted into string? Where is the int object in this line? As we have seen previously that whenever we are writing something in a print statement or even an input statement, the first thing which is there, that would be always an string, right? What it is string, but this thing is not a string. This is an integer. So inside this thing, everything has to be an integer. And so we convert this integer into string here. Are you able to get my point? The outcome of this thing, will be whatever we enter here. But we are saying that the entered value should be converted into int and stored in marks. The entered value should be converted into int and then stored in marks. That is fine, we understood. But what is there here? Whatever we write here has to be in the string format. Okay, because the input will always take the string. We are explicitly converting it into the integer. The entered thing will be converted, but the thing that we write in this input has to be string always. So I hope it makes sense for you. Then after that, what we do, let me print the marks. Each time do we print the marks? First let me close our file variable. Okay, then okay, each time we are entering the marks of the students. Let me take two students, enter the marks of student 1, I say 50, and enter the student marks, I say 60. Okay, we got it. Then do we write it here? No, we didn't write it. How we can write it? Each time whenever we are getting the marks in the for loop, can we write it here itself? For the first marks entered and then write it in the file. How can we write it in the file? Using the file object again, and then I say write, and what I say here, please, if I write marks, then I say slash n again. Okay, so that each of the marks will be written in the next line. Will it write the marks into the file? Okay, you are going to tell me the answer now. Okay, be alert, pay attention. What happened? I entered the first marks, so it means that the first line was executed. It took the number, whatever the number we have taken, it converted into int and stored in numbers. Then the file was created in the write mode, fine. Then it started, fine. Then the marks has been taken of one student and the execution stopped here. The line 7, it says unsupported operand type plus integer and string. It says that this is an integer and this is a string. How can I operate? Okay, no problem. Let me remove this. Okay. Are you following me? You're following me, right? We are experimenting things to understand what happens. So this is all the process of experimentation and learn the way of coding. Okay, again it says, even though I removed the slash n, it says me that the type error must be a string, not integer. So what is the integer here?
String of marks.
Yes, perfect. String of marks, because we have already understood that the text file will not take anything which is of integer. So we have to convert this integer into a string, and then we are accessing that, we can reconvert it. Okay, but this string I don't want it into the same line, I want it in the next line. Will it give me an error now? I wrote the slash n again. you there? Will it give me the error again? I wrote the /n.
No.
No. Okay. Why it will not give me the error this time?
The quotation string form.
Yes, because of the type conversion here, we have converted it into the string, and this is also a string. String plus string. Okay, no problem. We got the student marks in our file. Okay. So I'll give you a quick homework of reading the marks of this file. Okay, I'll just send you this lines of code that we have written here, and I want to write you a program which will read from this file. What is our file name? Student.txt, and we have written whatever the number of students that you give and whatever the number of marks that you give, that has to be stored. This part is written. Now your homework will be to read this thing. You will write some lines of code to read. How you will do? You will remove first this thing. You don't want to know the number of students, and just you want to read. Okay, try it as much as you can, and if you are not able to solve it, I'll try to help you in the next class. Okay, I'll just tell you some guideline how we can do. Okay, how we can do is read that file in the read mode, and then you can store the data. Okay, I can say data, and then you can access the data using this thing. I say read line. So I read the line. Fine. Then every time, whenever there is some, you have to run a loop again. You have to run a loop to read all the numbers. How? The first read line has been done. Okay, the first read line has been done. Then what you can do is you can run a loop. For example, I can say a loop. Okay, while loop. Yes, while loop. And then what we need to check is what is there in the data. If the data is, I can say, not equal to something like this. Okay, it's not equal to space. Space, I mean to say here, when we are going here, see how it's operating. When you are reading a file, you have to be very careful with the cursor. See here, it's starting here. Okay, we are reading the first one. 1, 2. Where it's going? Where it's going? 1, 2. Where it's going? Down. Is it going somewhere here? It's not going here anyway. It's just going right away in the next line. Right? After that, we have the enter or space. But in all these lines, we don't have any space. But if we write some string and we write some something like this, for example, I can say that in our file, I have written something like this. For example, it's my Alia and some students are doing Python. Okay, so I have written this. So when I am reading through this file, what marking or what check mark can I keep? I can't keep the check mark as the space. Okay, because this string file will have spaces and this string file will have something else. But of course, it will not have the enter. So it will have the spaces, but it will not have the enter. Okay, I'll not complicate your understanding more. We can experiment.
Can't we press enter? Can't we press enter and put in next line and keep in the colon?
Next line /n. We can keep it /n, no problem. We can keep it.
Just now you wrote Alia and some students are reading Python. That is in one line. Okay.
Yes.
That can't it be continued in the next line?
Yes, we can continue it in the next line by using the /n. And in that, for example, if you are using /ns and if you are using numbers and if you are using so many sentences, the reading of that file would become more complicated using the loops. It becomes more complicated. But because this is a text file and we have only numbers, and we understood that this file does not have any spaces, does not have anything, the next space is coming only after the end of the file. So we can keep a check of the end of the file. So the first data, this data is like an index, right? It's the start, it's the index. Are you getting my point? The data that I have taken here, I read the first line, which is the index, which is the start of the loop. And then with that start of the loop, what I am doing, please end the loop when you see a space. I am saying end the loop when you see the space.
Space between?
Space between here. When there is a space, this is the end of the file. Okay, after that, what I am doing, what I can do, okay, I can read the line. What was the first line? That is stored in data, right? So I will keep it in the, for example, marks is my variable, and now I want to keep the data. Tell me, will this marks will have an integer? No, because we have read this line and it is read as a string and stored in data. So I have to explicitly convert it into the integer, or even I can convert it here. I can convert it here, right? But when I convert it here, then what happens is every value that is running in the loop will not be converted. Only the first line will be converted. Are you able to get my point? Why I am converting it here? Because I am running this in the loop. And of course, when we are running something in the loop, it means that we are going through numerous values and each value has to be converted into int. If I only write here, then that will not be converted. Only one value will be converted, which is the first value. So then I say print marks. Where is my value that stored? Where is my value stored? Here. And each time I have to go to the next value, right? To the next line. How can I go to the next line? If I want to go to the next line, I have told you that when we write read line for the first time, it will read the first line. When I go to the second line, when I write the read line for the second time, it goes to the second line, right? So it means that we are reading line by line. So this time I can say that this data, the data, now please take the next line. Okay, this is clear. Is this clear?
Where is the next line?
This is the next line using the read line. I told you that whenever we are using the next line, read line for the next time, it will give us the next line always. It will give us the next line. Okay. Yeah, see here. What happened? It gave me. First time there was some syntax error because I gave here space. Whenever we are using the combination of two comparison operators, you should not keep any space in between. Even when you are using this like index plus equals 1, in this case also you should not give the space between plus and 1, plus and equals. Okay, so this was the error that I gave you. So how we are running through the file this time? Using the read line. Each time we are reading one line. Okay, this line has been read as the first thing. After that, that line has been stored in the marks by converting it to integer, and then we have printed it on the console. After that, we are saying read the next line, and store it in the data. So this will be running as a loop. Okay, data. This will take the next line and check if this is not equals to the space. Okay, if it's equals to the space, then it will come out of the loop. And then we'll get all of these things that we have there in our file. Okay. Yeah, I hope you understood it. I actually solved your homework here, but I'll give you some other homework and try to experiment and try to practice all of the problems that we have done today. Then you will be doing good, inshallah. So if you have any doubts, or we'll meet in the next class, maybe I'll announce later, inshallah. So we have to cover a good number of topics in Python and C++. Inshallah. C++ I have only, I think I need to take only one class for you. For Python I may need two to three classes more. Then we'll be done, inshallah. Okay. Okay, thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for listening so patiently. We'll see the rest of our topics later, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.